So, April from Maiasaura, how are you?
I'm well. How are you today?
I'm very good, very good. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. So happy to be here.
Yes, it's very cool. So, I've been checking out your music, and Girls Just Wanna, and I love the track.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
It's very well produced, very well written. I mean, it kind of hits from all angles. What was the inspiration behind that song?
It's so funny. A lot of different things. I feel like it's a song I've been wanting to write for a really long time, but didn't know what language to use. Ultimately, it was explicit language in the end, but it's it's sort of the initial idea started when my husband and I were watching a Kiss documentary. And there was a moment where one of the managers had said to them, you need to write uh, your anthem, the mission statement of the band. What is it? Like, if you could make a theme song, what would it be? And then that led to them writing one of their biggest hits. So I thought, hey, that's kind of a cool writing exercise. What would I do, or what would mine be? And just generally throughout my life, and definitely in music, I always kind of feel like an outsider or kind of an outcast in terms of what um, is in the bounds of what a girl should be or what they should be singing or how they should behave. So, and I never really felt weird until I felt like other people were like, no, you're not doing it right, or soften up, do this, all these different things. So, I think it sort of ignited a little frustration and anger in me over many years. So, there's a hit, Girls Just Want to Have Fun, which is really a great song. There's no shade to that, but it's like, that's the girls' theme song. It's like a pop culture theme song for girls. So I thought, like, yeah, they say girls just want to have fun, but on the outside of that, it's like I just want to, like, fuck shit up. I just get so angry and fuck shit up, like, in, it's almost like sort of like a cliche at this point where, we say it in English for many different reasons. It's like fuck shit up is like, I'm gonna really kill this interview. I'm gonna succeed. It's like a
Right.
positive thing too. So there's like a couple of little, like, I don't know, nuances in it. Not that it's really super nuanced on my part, but I didn't really know when I came up with that phrase. I was like, what does this mean? I don't really know. Like, I'm definitely pissed, but I'm also kind of empowered to, like, do something about it. So it sort of started from there. And then the next day, my partner and I, we went into the studio and we were supposed to write something else, but then he picked up the guitar and started playing this really cool acoustic riff, which is what opens up the song now. And
Yeah.
I was like, that's really cool. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to start making a track. So Jacob and I both produce and write everything. So it was pretty easy to just get the idea down right then and there. So yeah, he got the track done in like about 3 hours, the first version of it. It's pretty close to what you hear now. They changed a few
Wow.
things. Yeah. Lucky
That's
to have him in
fast.
my corner.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So then I just wrote the rest of it over that. That vocal that's in there is the day of demo for the whole thing. I tried to
What?
re-sing it. I tried to re-sing it, and I couldn't match it the way I liked it. So I was like, just keep it.
Do you notice that usually like the first take or first couple of takes are the best? When you try to go back later, it's not the same energy, vibe, what have you.
Yeah, no, 100%, because I think you're in the moment, and if you've written the lyrics that day or in that time period, you're closer to the mental state you were in when you wrote it. And so I think that has something to do with it. And I also think you don't have time to overthink performing it, like, you just do it, you just sing it, and you're just enjoying being in there and getting a new thing down. So there's like a different excitement behind it and a freshness to it. So yeah, and I try not to be too precious about it. I've been really picky in the past, and it really doesn't make a difference, I've noticed. You
Really?
just gotta let it, yeah. Like, I mean, obviously you gotta put out quality stuff, but there's, certain things for me, like I have to pick my battles. Like, if I show 10 people the same track and they're like, you sound good, and I trust these people, I'm gonna be like, okay. Just because I feel a certain way about it, I've been starting to trust more people around me, like anybody that's working on the project, friends of mine. I'm like, you know what, if you think so, that's fine by me. I used to be
Yeah.
very proud about it. Like, no, I have to sing it 100 times. It's like, no, it didn't matter in the end. And this song did fine. This song does fine with just having the demo vocal on. It sounds good to me.
Sounds great. So most of it was just done in a day. And you probably maybe went back, changed a few things, but the majority of the performance.
Yeah,
Right?
vocals were all one day. Maybe we went back and sang one or two harmonies just to pump it up. Um, yeah, but 80% of what's on the track currently was done that day. And the one thing that we didn't nail that day was the chorus production. Initially, so what happens now is there's that acoustic guitar riff in the beginning, and then what goes on under the chorus once it starts is that same riff, but it's with an electric guitar and the bass, and they both do it. So that's what I'm singing over in the chorus, the exact same thing. Um, but before that, since this was a song we made earlier on in the project too, we didn't really know what the style was yet.
Mm-hmm.
The first version of the chorus had these like almost more like punk rock type stops in it. So it was like bump bump. They say bump bump. That girl's on or whatever. So I don't actually remember, but it was like more stops, like punky,
Yeah.
where we and it for some reason it like cut off the momentum that we had built up into that point. But now like in hindsight, or like now that we've created, a ton more songs for this project, just the rule basically is it needs to bounce. Needs to make you want to do this. Like most new metal songs that I love or
Mm-hmm.
rap rock songs in this genre, like it's always you're kind of consciously or unconsciously you're bopping. So that's why I bopped to that beginning riff. So I'm like, well, can't we just put that riff under this? Because a lot of
Right.
again, a lot of songs, the more I was like listening, a lot of songs in this style like do that. They sing over the main riff, or they'll be singing over a riff, even if it's not the main one. So um but yeah, that's kind of how that song went. We had a lot of fun with it. It sort of kicked off the project, and we were like, okay, I think I know what we're gonna make now.
Yeah, I love it. I love that little dun 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 dun, the little break in there. It just
Yeah.
really catches your attention.
Thank
You know,
you.
the highs and the lows of the song, the ebbs and flows of the song. Very
Thank
cool.
you.
So tell me, how did you start off? Like, where was your first musical memories growing up? Where did you grow up, and what was the first musical memories that you really felt the music hitting you? Like, okay, something's happening here.
That's a great question. So I'm originally from Long Island, New York. I grew up there, and my mother was the musician in the house. She never pursued it professionally, but she used to record on an 8-track. There was at one point a little recording setup in our computer room. It was my dad's computer and her recording stuff. I remember in our first house. And she had a synth in there and a microphone and a vocal pedal and all these cool things that we were just around a lot, and I'd see her using them, and we would be on the songs, and it was really cool. But she pretty much taught me how to play the piano, and she tells me that she also trained my ear. Apparently I was a little tone deaf the first time I opened my mouth. I must have been no like younger than 3, but
Oh,
yeah. So yeah, no, she's the best. But she basically taught me how to sing and play piano. And she did that really by teaching me her songs. So all the song that she wrote. So all the songs that I know or that are like my classics, it's like songs that my mother wrote.
that's cool.
So yeah, so I thought it was always so cool. So and we would share that, like, she would play some of her old, because she's in bands at least since she was 18. So I have these, and she had me when she was 30. So, there's all this time of recorded music that she would share with me on cassettes, and we would listen to them together. And so organized, God bless her. She had all of her lyrics written out in notebooks. She still does, and we would listen and she'd talk about it, and we would just talk about it, and it's literally how I got to know her. Like all of the small things in her life where she felt like she could have done better, all these really cool things. So that, I think, showed me kind of like the importance of music in, collecting someone's history and being able to connect with people. I mean, that was just so central in my own life. And then I think, from there I always played and sang and all that. But I think in terms of music outside of the home, the first record or artist I became like absolutely obsessed with was Regina Spektor, who
Nice.
plays really soft, poetic piano music. And yeah, when I was 14 years old, I just used to pop that in I guess it was my iPod at the time. And every day to and from school, I would just be like lost in her music. I just couldn't believe the way she was writing. It was
Hmm.
just so interesting to me. It was so against the grain of like what I heard on the radio and things like that. Like I've never been, me and my husband always joke, like I'm always the person that looks for the deep cuts on the album or the songs that kind of have no way about them. And then he loves like structured hits, since I feel like that's why we're a cool team because you get a little bit of both in that sense. I think girls is kind of like that too, where it kind of just goes off at the end, but
Right.
it's got that structure that you can kind of tap into. But anyway, yeah. And then Regina Spektor I loved. And then sort of like woven throughout that, I loved new metal bands like Linkin Park. I loved Marilyn Manson. Like in fifth grade, I was getting Slipknot CDs, Disturbed CDs. Like we're all listening to it too. Mother, father, and my brother all introduced me to like some of my favorite metal and new metal bands. So, and Muse. My brother introduced me to Muse. That was a big one in high school too.
They're awesome.
Yeah, I mean, so good. So yeah, that those are kind of my, in terms of me being like I love music and I want to be involved with music, those were sort of and I felt, connected to it. And nothing else, really drew me in the same way. And yeah. And I have like a small like theater background from school, so sort of in plays. But I never really connected the two until, a little later in life where I was like, I want to actually do this professionally.
Hey, this is Jeff. I'd like to take a second and tell you about this channel. I really encourage you to hit the subscribe button. This really helps out the channel, helps it grow. And also, if you can like and put your comments for this video, that'd so much be appreciated. This really helps me to continue to book amazing artists that hopefully inspire you and continue to grow this channel. Thank you. That's very cool. And what was that point where you said, I want to do this professionally? Did you play in bands or do some shows? What happened?
So I was doing musical theater in high school. And, like growing up in New York, you're very close to Broadway shows, and that's very accessible to me. I was like, well, maybe I could just write musicals and be in them or perform in them. I wrote a rock musical in high school and produced it and did the whole thing with a bunch of kids I grew up with, which was awesome. So that was
Wow.
my first taste of like facilitating something like a show.
Yeah.
It mirrors, promoting a show in my life now. Um, so I really liked that. And I liked the role of being sort of in the driver's seat. Whereas the more I got into musical theater, I realized my fate rested in a lot of other people's hands just to get into the show. Obviously music, in the music industry, you need a lot of luck as well. And your hands can rest in the fate of others. But for the most part, you can always exist as a musician and like not be cut off at the knees. Like you can still and like you can't be in a musical just whenever you want. You need to audition. And there's all these different things that sort of bar you from doing that every day or doing it as a career. So, I mean, and quite honestly, I wanted to get into musical theater school and I just didn't. And I
Really?
was like, I don't think, yeah, I was like, I don't think they want me here. But but the truth of it is, it's like I didn't like the classic musicals. I only liked rock musicals. I don't like the contemporary stuff that was kind of coming out. Like I loved Rent and like stuff that kind of put rock musicals and contemporary musicals like on the map. So I realized when people were like talking about all the classics, oh, I'd love to be in the Sound of Music. I'm like, I no. They're not bad. It's just not something I'd want to be in, like where I really could see myself taking on that role. So yeah, I think just like as I grew up and realized there were more options in where to apply my interests, I just did. So yeah, I didn't get into music school. I went to business school instead, which is an awesome idea because it helps me every day still, with the way I manage our production business and my own, the band and the way we do everything. And then yeah, and then from there I had the freedom to just sort of play gigs whenever I wanted. So I was in a band and then I also played keys for a couple bands in New York. And, a few years after college I wound up just doing that full time. I was just playing for other people full time.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Did
Yeah.
you learn a lot doing those shows, like, seeing what you liked, what you didn't like for your own band?
Yeah. Yeah. It was so good. I don't know. I had moments in my 20s that I look back on now and I was like, that was really smart to do. Like I perceive myself as a very impulsive person, especially in my 20s. So it's
Hmm.
very intelligent. I felt like so I played for a lot of other people, and my goal in doing that, obviously other than making a little money, was to see what bands were like what different band, synergies were like, what does the lead person do? And it really taught me a lot because being a lead singer is so easy compared to being in the band. The band, you have to, there's so many things. Like, one of the cool things I learned about being in band was like, you're like the most important role that you have is knowing when not to play
So true, right?
and when not, and that made me a better singer because I was always over singing. I love to sing, so obviously I want to sing in every moment and every beat and every rest. So yeah, so things like that really I wouldn't have known if I was just always kind of in the front. Um, so things like that were really cool, and it just kind of helped me overall. Like when I would tour with different acts or and get to see different people's sets and different genres, it started to get me more in that mindset of, oh, okay, if I put like a bunch of O's and repeating things in the beginning of my song, I can get the audience to do it even if they don't know me. I've seen so many bands do that. So, I would come off of tours and then have these crazy writing sprees where I was like, I'm gonna make something like that. So it kind of all developed sort of what I'm still doing today, which is really, really special. I don't know. Those were kind of like the beginnings of it.
That's so great. You got that experience playing with different bands and artists and picking up things. And I so agree with you. From my time for playing for different artists and bands, it's knowing when not to play, right?
Yes.
Because you
Yes.
automatically you want to fill in all the gaps and yeah, let me show that what I've got. But it's also like, no, like this part, I should just not play anything, which makes you feel weird because you're like, well, this is a live. What am I gonna do? Just stand there. But it makes sense. It's just certain parts that just grooves better as a unit, right?
Hmm. Yeah, and you need dynamics too. You need, you know, taking out, just for instance, like taking out the bass and, a few, like a measure before the chorus hitting or something, like, or right before the bridge, it will make that chorus more impactful, or having, you know, taking out one extra little cymbal hit, like a ride cymbal hit in throughout the verse and throwing it in the chorus, it's just like kind of knowing what's right for the song and what's right for the moment because building dynamics is really important, especially when I'm going to just speak for me and Jacob. Like we do everything in the box. We do mostly everything digitally. He programs every single drum hit. He plays the guitars, he plays the bass all through mostly amp simulators. We're not doing anything like live in terms of like we can change the tones after and things like that. I'm obviously singing and that's live, but a lot of what we do is very digital and that's most people now. It's across all the genres. So being able to maintain like a real world, feeling like dynamic, like you want to hear those dynamics because that is lost, I think, when you work with so many digital things. And I think that's why live music will always be the best because you have that ability to create that energy and those dynamics in the room through the music just because you really don't have any other choice.
Yeah.
You can't pretty it up. It's there. It's what
It's
it is.
live. What you're gonna
Yeah.
do, just let it go.
Yeah.
That's
So
so cool. Yeah. So you picked up a lot. That's really cool. So I mean, what's your normal writing process with you and Jacob? You kind of do you ever start with lyrics or a melody or with the track? What do you normally do?
so with this band, I find it's easiest if I can write over some sort of track. I've definitely come in with stuff I've written on piano. I don't play guitar. I've always been in rock bands, but I only play piano and sing. So, and I'm generally tempted to always write like mid-tempo leaning on ballads. Like that's kind of just my sweet spot. It's just where that's where my pulse is at naturally. I could do whatever, but I think if I could just mindlessly sit down and write anything, like it'll be that.
Hmm.
So I think in keeping with the genre and the overall like ethos of the project. It's good for me to write over a track with a set tempo, whether Jacob wrote it or like I'll write over karaoke's of songs and then just take the vocal and we'll build something around it.
I love that. Really?
Yeah. Yeah. The internet's amazing because like awesome musicians will also just put stuff up like for people to write over, or like if you're trying to learn like common progressions in metal or other genres, you can, it could be literally anything, you just look it up. So I'll just like write over karaoke songs that I like or stuff that Jacob has made. Oftentimes too, for me, like I have to enjoy the lyric, or if I come up with like a lyric or a one liner, that'll ultimately drive me to just keep writing it. So, my writing process is like always changing, but I think like in terms of efficiency for this project, it's really helpful if I, in an ideal situation, I'll have some lyrics. I'll know what I want the track to sound like, and we find a track, whether Jacob makes it or I find one, and then I can just kind of go from there. And then it's pretty easy for the most part, which is great. So that's kind of what it's been looking like lately. But oftentimes too, if Jake just has an idea, I'll like in this room, he'll sit at the desk here at our whole workstation's here, and I'll just sit right back there and I'll just, as he's making stuff, I'll just kind of write ideas just free form, just based on how it sounds. So yeah, that's kind of a general sense of what it looks like.
That's really cool. So when you do the free form, you probably have all these lines, line by line by line, and then you probably take a little piece from here, and then you match it with the second half of this line. But it all kind of fits, right? Because it's all from the same vibe, the same energy.
Yeah, yeah, because my thought is if you can come up with, even if you just free write for me, like as long as I know what the intention of the lyric is supposed to be, I can make it fit. Like I can edit a word or I can edit the cadence of the words so it fits. Because for me, the thing that I get hung up on is like empty lyrics where it's like, yeah, it fits the cadence, but it means nothing. Which is kind of, that's something I'm a little bit of a stickler for. Like every single word doesn't need to count, but to me, like a perfect song, they do. Like every word means something to, like the or the but makes a difference in the sentence.
Yeah.
Like I'm a little kooky like that, but I love writing. So not just songs, but anything. So language is important to me in the music. But like I said, like intention is kind of most important, at least with songs, because they're so short. Like what I could write about based on the subject that I put in songs. I mean, I could write 5, 10 pages about it really in a free write. But the point is to get the clarity of that 10-page paper into a 2.5, 3 minute song. So you gotta like, as long as I get the intention of what I'm doing, I could probably like bend it into enough of what I need it to be.
Yeah, it's a limited space. Like you said, you've got 3.5 minutes, give or take, and it's like, how can you tell a story in that amount of time? It's kind of hard to fit it in that short time frame, right?
That's what drives me crazy. Yeah, because like I want to sing all the notes, say all the things, but the freeing thing is you can always just write another one.
That's right.
It's limited within the song, but it's not limited in the amount of times you can try to write the same song, or you can just write another one. You can just move it over and write another one.
That is a great idea as well. So just take leftover. You got plenty enough for a second song.
Yeah. Yeah, or just try to like do it better. I don't know. There's there's a lot of pressure. I feel like I did it more when I was younger, and I see young people doing it that we work with too. Like there's a lot of pressure to get it right in the first try or get it just right in general, but there's no real way to get it right. Like obviously there's formulas and songs and things like that, but even if you write the song with the perfect formula, like it doesn't guarantee its success. So it's just like, and you also just have to know at the end of the day, you just got to kind of like that song is what it's probably going to be, and you just need to move on from it. Like if you're not getting what you want, and I don't mean move on like quit, but just put it to the side. Maybe in 2 years you'll know how to write it.
Yeah.
That's happened to me.
You got to know when to put it on the shelf, right? Because
Yeah.
otherwise you can drive yourself crazy. You keep, I
Yeah,
gotta
and then
get this right. I
it'll
gotta get
ruin
this
it.
right.
Yeah,
Right?
it'll ruin it for you too. Like you want to keep the reason that you wrote the song and like the meaning of the song. You want to focus on that, not why you're angry about you can't write it, because that's going to come through, I think anyway. So,
No, you're right. It could come through the frustration of not being able to quite where you're trying to go.
yeah.
But that's great. I mean, when you get stuck, do you take a break? What do you do to kind of unwind the creative mind?
I just put it down. I really just put it down. I used to just obsess over it, but now I just put it down and I for a couple days and then I'll listen to it with fresh ears a couple days later. And usually that first listen after a couple days, I'm like, okay, it's not as bad as I thought. Is usually the first thing I think.
Right.
And then I can kind of see a little bit more objectively where I'm like listening to it like it's not my song. I'm listening to it like someone else's. So yeah, putting it down for me helps a lot. And yeah, I just sit on stuff, for a week, 2 weeks, month. Like the next single that we're putting out, I mean, it took over probably close to a year to get it like really right, but it's because it was an earlier song. But we both were so obsessed with the intro riff. We're like, we got to get it right. But so there was like I also am lucky I work with another person. So if I don't get it, sometimes he can get it and vice versa. So yeah.
I love that. Now tell me, I think what a lot of artists and writers are missing is a great creative partner that fits them. And I love how you're saying before that you and Jacob match each other. I mean, how did you guys connect on a music level?
Yeah, so me and Jacob met because my band opened for his band back in 2018. And there were two different bands. So I was in a band called the Rose Monarch. It was rock. It was a little bit more like indie and maybe even verging on like prog. It
Prog
was
rock.
cool. It was really cool stuff. It was cool. And then he was more of in a band that was like rock pop, but almost like more radio friendly. He was signed to RCA Records at the time. So it was a really cool time in his life. And I was like, this guy probably doesn't want anything to do with me. But then he came up to me after my set and he was like, you are so good. I'm like, really? Thanks. And then he's like, yeah, we should write sometime. I'm like, okay, sure. So he was at the time writing in New York City a lot at Sony. And I had never written in a actual like music building before, like a publishing office, none of that. So he like invited me to go write with him at Sony. And it's like, what the heck? This is so cool. So and then the first song we wrote together wound up getting cut by RCA. So then I all of a sudden had like a label cut under my belt just from this one session. So our first writing session went super well. He put it out. So we kind of were like, all right, I guess we need to keep working together because that went well. And then shortly after that, he needed a keyboard player for a tour that was coming up. And so I played synth and keys and sang backup for him on a 6-week tour. And we went to all around the US and Canada. It was amazing. So that's kind of like how it all started. And after that, we just kept working together, producing stuff, writing stuff. And eventually during COVID, when we weren't touring anymore, we wound up becoming like full-time music producers together for other artists because a lot of people that got laid off or all of a sudden had money to produce music or to, record music, they were asking us, where do you get your music done? I want to go to them. It sounds so good. And we're like, well, we do all of it. So, and people were asking for rates and we're like, I don't know, but yeah, come over, we'll figure it out. Like, and then since COVID, that like 2020, that's pretty much what we've been doing to survive. And in 2023, we moved to Nashville just to kind of, because we were out in Pennsylvania at the time. I went from New York to Pennsylvania to here. But yeah, during the pandemic, I was mostly in Pennsylvania and it was really good for producing. And honestly, there's now being on the outside of it, there's a lot of really cool stuff going on in PA in terms of the music world, like in the rock world. There's like actual stuff
Really?
going on. Yeah, and there's a lot of
Hmm.
talent out there. I genuinely believe there's like a lot of talent out there. And but as artists, we are finding like there's a bit of a ceiling there. So we wanted to come to Nashville, and be producers while we could also get, maybe some interest in an artist project or something like that. So that's kind of
Right.
like our musical journey in a very small nutshell.
Well, it's a great journey. I like it. What would you say is the biggest difference between New York and Nashville music scene?
Oh, wow. Well, for one, there is a scene here in Nashville. I believe that's like really unfortunate. Like, I can't speak for LA as much, but New York, I mean, it's almost impossible to like live there now, which breaks my heart because I want to be there. I love it
Yeah.
there in terms of just what it gives you and how you can live there. I'm used to that. That's more of my thing. But Nashville, I definitely feel like a fish out of water here, but the industry is so incredible. And I don't mean it in the sense of like there's just a lot of industry people down here. It's the way that people treat each other in the Nashville world. It's small, and most people will give you a chance if you get along. Like one of our bigger champions down here in terms of supporting us and helping us out with things and connecting the dots is like in the country music world doesn't even like really like our music. Like he likes us. He likes
Like
us and
yours
he's a
people.
friend.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a friend. And I think, and I don't know if it's sort of the touch of like Southern hospitality or whatever, but there's just a lot of, there's a lot of doors if you're willing to knock on them. And obviously you're gonna be told no a bunch. That's just what it is. But I always felt like in New York, like as much as the lifestyle, I think helped me get a little bit more inspired and I was on the move more. It was more eccentric, more diverse in a lot of ways creatively. I don't think like the industry was at the time that I was in it, I don't think it was helping to promote upward movement for indies. And it's just, so that's kind of how I felt. That might have been just been my experience. Again, I also was able to be a full-time musician there, working for other people. But in terms of getting support and launching something, it was definitely different. I always felt like um I wasn't how can I explain? I just never felt like I could get like eyes on anything I was doing. I just kind of felt like I don't know. I think I was a little out of place there. But I think on the flip side, we're in Nashville doing a new metal project. So there's not many people doing it, and there's not many people actively working on metal down here, but there are some. So generally speaking, we get connected with those people fairly quickly because
Right.
it's a smaller group and things like that. So I don't know. I would just say in general, like I'm in Nashville because the industry is just welcoming and it feels authentic down here. People are honest with you. It's great.
I get the same reports from LA to Nashville. I mean, LA is a great music scene, but it's so spread out and kind of
Hmm.
all over the place. And then you go to Nashville and it's very nice, condensed. Everybody knows each other, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Friendly,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it's different. And obviously like nothing's perfect, but yeah, I just feel like in terms of the industry, the way it's handled, I mean, they look at it like a business down here. I think in other places it's more about the vanity and the ego of it and just being able to say I'm an artist. Here, I mean, there's traffic in Nashville at 3 p.m., like rush hour traffic. And the reason is, in my experience, all the Nashville writing sessions, if you're in the city or whatever outside of it, they're usually from 11 to 3 p.m. It's 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. And everybody leaves the office at 3 p.m. And people do double writes, triple writes, they work all day. But generally speaking, people in this town treat it like a day job. They
That's
enter
really
the
cool.
office, they plan it, and then they leave. And I think there's a lot to say about that. And I think that speaks like to the greater sort of seriousness of music down here versus other places.
It's a legit job. It's a legit business,
Yeah,
and it's a real community. That's what I'm hearing. Right?
yeah, yeah, it is. And I mean, there's other writing, like in New York, like I've done writing sessions and they're like 10 to 6, but it's not like that's not everybody's experience. I genuinely feel like most people's experiences here, at least that I know, it's that 11 to 3 writing, producing life. Like that's what everyone does for work. So it's just interesting, but that's my experience with it. Yeah.
Cool way of life. What about doing shows in Nashville? How's that going?
So we've done 2 shows with Maiasaura in Nashville. Like the first single just came out a month ago. January 17th. So we had done sort of a smaller show at the Analog in late October to just kind of see what it all sounded like live. And that was super fun. I mean, the biggest comment was like, I've never seen this in Nashville before. It's like, yeah, this is very silly to be trying to do this here, but we're just gonna go for it. And then we just had a show January 22nd, kind of as a single release party. We called it New Metal Night with two other acts out here. And that was also super fun. And it's so funny when you play live shows, people in the audience, they see something different in you, they get excited by it. It's nice to meet people face to face, sell merch. But yeah, so every live show has just been really a fun experience, and it keeps me energetic and motivated to keep building things, to just keep doing those live shows.
Yeah, super cool. And I'm sure it probably wasn't too hard to find players for the band to do the shows and replicate what you recorded.
Yeah, it's funny because yes and no. Um, it was there's a lot of musicians out here, but it's a very like specific kind of playing with like how percussive it is, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
So there, and also like Jacob's playing guitar, so we needed someone that was playing the bass and could do everything. It's all the same. Pretty much the bass and guitar do the exact same thing, playing the same riffs, things like that. But we found people, like we found like we actually flew our friend. We had to import our bassist for the first show, Jerome Betts. He's an incredible from Pennsylvania. He's probably like one of the best bass players I know. He's incredible. So we brought him in for that just because I didn't have to think about it. And then we had Lou Vecchio, who used to be the drummer of New Politics. He played both the shows, and then our friend Hallie jumped in on bass. She's a producer out here. So that was cool too, to have her. So we found our people. It was a little harder than I thought because it's like I don't know, it's just an interesting niche of music. Like it's simple to those who know it, but complicated to those who don't. So in terms of what it demands,
Oh yeah.
but you gotta look the part and all that. But yeah, we did okay though. We were able to get the shows together and make it happen. So
And I mean, there's an audience for it in Nashville, right? I mean, most people think, oh, it's only country, but it's like there's fan bases for everything. Yeah.
yeah, and it's growing too. And I think a lot of the even like the old school Nashville people, like executives, people working labels and stuff, like they're very welcoming to all the different genres that are coming into town. I mean, it's building the Nashville music community. So it's like, why not welcome it? So it's great because I think it's a really good time because everything's growing. So it's still sort of new and exciting and but small. Um, but there's definitely things going on, like in terms of there's a little pop corner, there's a little alt corner, punk corner. We're trying to make a little new metal corner. So
I don't see why not. I know they got a rap hip hop corner over there. I mean, they
yeah,
got everything.
I met an R&B guy the other day. I was like, okay, yeah, do you like do it, you know? So
So what's coming up next? Are you gonna keep working on the album or
yeah, so our goal for 2025 is we will be releasing a single every month. That's about 4 weeks, anywhere between 4 and 6 weeks, but we have everything planned out. And we're releasing a visual with each one. So we've been also doing all our own music videos. We just shot the fourth single music video yesterday. So that was a
nice,
blast. So
nice.
yeah, we've got up until, April covered. We have about I mean, we have tons of songs, but so it'll be about 12 songs in total this year. We're not sure if we'll release over the holidays yet because Mariah Carey usually has like free reign over November and December.
That's true.
Maybe we'll, maybe we'll
Yeah.
do like a cover or, if I can find a holiday song I can tolerate, maybe I'll do a cover or something. But that's kind of what it's looking like, depending on what happens from there, we'll see. But you know, we're hoping that these will sort of build into the collection of an album at some point. So what's being released this year is very likely to be on the first album that we will put out. So yeah, we'll see. That's kind of what we're doing.
And more shows coming up.
Yes, hopefully. We don't have one right this moment, but hoping sometime in the spring, I think would be a nice time to do another show down here and hopefully, play out of state sometime too. We're trying to find some acts that would make sense to go travel to and play with as well. So
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys would do well in multiple markets. And so tell me, as a creative, how does your day begin and how does your day end?
depending on the day, my perfect day looks like this, I'll tell you that. My perfect day looks like I wake up at around 7 in the morning, very well rested. We feed the dog, bring her out. Um, then we can generally sense how the day's going based on the weather. But then we like to work out. I work out, try to work out every morning. And then we like to start working around 11 as well, kind of sticking to that little Nashville schedule. And, we'll break for lunch, depending on what it is. Like, so the work could be music, like we actually need to sing something or produce something. And sometimes it's sending emails, following up with people. Sometimes it's posting content or creating content. So we'll, do that kind of work, break for lunch. We generally post content in the afternoon. That's like the window that works. So we're trying to post every day, just about. Um, and then more work. Dinner time, I cook. We read and we've been watching The Sopranos lately, so we'll just put on The Sopranos.
Nice.
Yeah, read a little bit before we go to bed and that's kind of it. I mean, that's like in terms of like a creative all day type thing, that's kind of what it looks like for us. And yeah.
That sounds like a nice balance, especially with The Sopranos.
Yes,
What is
that
it about
helps.
that show that's just like,
It's still so good after all these years. What is it?
It's so funny because I'm third generation Italian American. So growing up in New York until I was literally 27 years old, I didn't find the charm of The Sopranos because my dad would watch it. I'm like, yeah, of course. This is where we're from. This is what it looks like. Like, yeah, I mean, obviously none of us were in the mob, but like, like the different sayings, the cultural stuff, like all the food, like all these different things in there. I'm like, I get it. Okay, cool. Now I've been out of New York for close to 6 years. And
mhm.
that's why, and I'm watching it and remembering things and tapping into things. And I realize it's making me realize how special the Italian American culture is in New York, New Jersey, even Pennsylvania. There's, tricklings of it.
Yeah.
Um, so it's like a really like, and I think it's really interesting because we're obviously like all American, but it's such a strange little niche part of American culture that is still so like strong and specific to the roots of where everyone's come from.
Yeah.
And obviously that's my experience. I'm sure there's pockets of that, you know, in other places, but yeah, I'm just loving it because it's like giving me all this like nostalgia, these words I haven't heard. Like I'm like, Maron. I'm like, my dad used to say that. I haven't heard Maron in like so long, stuff like that. So just funny stuff and even the food that they have on the plate. But for me, that's why it's special. I think generally why it's special. I feel like it kicked off all the types of shows that we love now. Like I feel like it was like kind of like it paved the way for shows like Breaking Bad,
That's right.
Yeah.
and
The anti hero, right?
yes.
Right.
Because I have not once hated Tony Soprano. I
It's
should,
you can't.
but I
You
can't.
can't.
I love him.
He
He does bad things, but yet he's so relatable.
and
Right.
I
It's
feel
like,
his pain.
And I feel his struggle.
right.
Right.
So yeah. So it's like I think because it just paved the way for shows like that we're all obsessed with now, and that take a similar format. And I think it just tapped into something that they've made so many movies about in the past, but it humanized it. It humanized the culture
Yes.
of, like The Godfather, Goodfellas, or whatever. It didn't so much make it out to be like these superhero caricature villains. It's like, no, these are like human beings. And that's more true to life than anything. So I think that's what was interesting about it. It humanized a group of people in a way that I don't think many considered,
It's
which we
so
need
real.
more of. Yeah.
So real.
And coming from a real place, do you ever get inspired by TV and movies? Does it help the writing process, writing songs?
Yeah, yes. So there's this song, I'll speak on it quickly, like, so I'll keep like a note in my phone just of one line ideas, or if I hear a quote or something that's cool, like if somebody said something on a show, or I'll just snip it, like I'll just take it and maybe it'll inspire a song or maybe a title or something. And after like almost a year of doing this, I had so many cool things from quotes and documentaries and shows and whatever. I finally was writing a song over track not too long ago. I was like, what if I just pick my favorite lines from each thing and just make a song, see what it sounds like? Because
Love it.
I had just heard, what song was it? There's this Rihanna song that has all of these 80s song titles in it. Have you ever heard of this?
I don't know if I know that one.
It's like one of her, I think it's not SOS. I don't know. I'm gonna email it to you or I'll send it to you when I think of what it is, but it's not, you don't know that they are. They just took all the titles and put them in and she's singing it. It's a totally different song.
Wow.
So it's a lot of these like 80s titles, unless this is a meme, but I'm pretty sure this is real. So that's kind of what inspired me, and a lot of the lyrics in this new song, I think we're gonna put it out 5th, so sometime in May. So it's all these different, really like striking lines, and then it's sort of a song about nothing except all these different feelings that you can have.
But it gives you a certain feel.
Yeah, but it's kind
Mm.
of like, oh yeah, I get that, I get that, I get that, I get that. So yeah, to answer your question, yeah, TV and films, and I love documentaries mostly. I was never a huge TV person, but like documentaries I like I love that, and true to life stories. I like real, like when knowing like it happened to someone, or
Yes.
it can happen. I like that. I prefer that over like dragons and stuff.
Yeah, it's relatable. It's like a
Yeah.
real
Story. And all these, you could write about them in a way, right?
Yeah. So yeah, I didn't get one down from The Sopranos yet because I've just been enjoying it on an emotional level of like reminiscing. I don't know, because I'm a 90s kid too, so like even some of the clothes, some of the music, it's like it brings me back a little bit to that time, and you know over back in New York and Jersey, so it's cool.
Hard to beat the 90s. Great decade.
I know, that's when new metal was born.
It
That's
was,
when
it
new metal
was,
was born. So
including
Linkin Park and all them.
yeah.
Linkin Park, yeah, Corn and Limp Bizkit. Corn is credited with creating new metal. I don't know if you know that. I Googled it and I was like, who made new metal?
They were
You know,
different. They were
yeah.
really
Different. Like the bass player was just so, like, stood out, right? Like, what is that?
No,
nobody
they're
sounded like that.
no, and like the groove and bass and just the all overall like percussive elements of new metal, like the way Corn kind of like laid it out. That's what kind of makes, and that's what kind of makes rap rock its own beast. It's really cool. So yeah, and I think the 90s, just it's funny because it was really like a prosperous time in a lot of ways, but a lot of people were also like really pissed. Like it was just such an interesting like, but it's right before the internet literally changed everything. I think that's why we look at it very with rose-colored glasses in a sense. It was just like a
Sure.
totally other time,
Before
a
everything
time
went
that,
digital.
yeah, it was the last era of tangible things, like
Yeah.
truly tangible.
You bring up a good point. It was a good decade, but it was edgy too. The music was very kind of pushy, angry, but it just had that off, right?
Yeah. That's really the last time I feel like rock and grunge and anything that's remotely distorted or negative like had the mainstream uh interest at the time. So I feel like I don't know if I'm biased. I feel like something's coming back around with that. Linkin Park just got a new singer, and everybody's doing their, 25th, 20th, whatever anniversary tours of those records. So who knows, but
I think you're foreseeing a comeback. Comeback.
Of
I
a
know.
sound,
We need to get that aggression out in the music.
Yeah,
especially right
I would
now.
love to see it. I know. I would love to see it. I think a lot of people need to feel like their anger is justified. I feel like people need to come together through that. Like, I don't want to further divide. I think it needs to just open up a conversation of understanding at this point.
That's
Like,
right.
yeah, we all feel that, man. Like, we all feel it. So,
Awesome. Well, April, tell us where we can find you online.
so everything is at Maiasaura Music. I'll spell it. It is Maiasaura Music. That's on Instagram, TikTok, Spotify as well, Apple Music, all the things. And our website is maiasauramusic.com as well.
Awesome, awesome. Well, it's been an honor and a privilege, and I'm looking forward to hearing more music. And I'm gonna make a prediction. I expect to see big things.
Well, thank you. And I hope we can talk about them all. That would be
Ah,
great.
I'd love a part two.